President Trump, Senator Lindsey Graham, and leading conservatives have a new concern about the Mueller probe, complaining the feds were too tough in their raid and arrest of Roger Stone. It's not just talk. Senator Graham alleging a double standard. He's formally demanding the FBI address whether Stone was treated more harshly than similarly charged individuals. The available facts show that Stone, indicted on 7 counts but currently free on bail, is not facing discrimination. Across the country, law enforcement commonly use hardball tactics in raids, searches, and arrests, and prosecutors often use the most harsh tactic, getting defendants jailed before trial to press them into pleading. Sitting in jail before trial leads people to risk losing their jobs, facing all kinds of extra pressure. It can literally break them. Now, that hardball works the most on the poor because the bail system benefits the rich. So while the indicted former Trump aides have seen bonds in the millions of dollars because of the seriousness of their charges, a higher sum than many defendants with lesser charges who face $10,000 bonds. Many of those poor defendants are stuck in jail before trial. 370,000 people jailed before trial because they can't afford bail. While Stone and company have the money to get out before trial, the number of ex-Trump aides jailed upon their first charges? 0. None. In fact, one Trump defendant, Paul Manafort, was later jailed but charged because of violating his bail. But none of them initially jailed on charges. And the racial disparity is stark. Black defendants are being detained at a rate nearly 5 times higher than white defendants. So while hundreds of thousands of similarly presumed innocent defendants are jailed because they can't make bail, Roger Stone is walking free. He's doing interviews. He's even thanking Republicans for criticizing the force used by the FBI.
I'm heartened by the fact that Senator Graham and these House Republicans will get to the bottom of why this show of force was necessary.
But those other Republicans wrote and supported the very laws that authorize how the feds arrested Stone. And they haven't been sympathetic to defendants and criminals. It's light compared to a double standard from Donald Trump, who's talked up, quote unquote, tough and downright unconstitutional policing tactics against many unnamed suspects and against other cases involving poor and minority defendants. This is a topic Trump and Stone are pushing tonight, so it's worth seeing the record up close.
When you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you just see them thrown in, rough. I said, please don't be too nice.
They broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys, good man, and it's a disgraceful situation.
Like, don't hit their head, and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
I've always found Paul Manafort to be a very decent man. To wake him up, perhaps his family was there, I think that's pretty tough stuff.
The laws are so horrendously stacked against us, totally made to protect the criminal, not the officers.
He told the Daily Caller he's disappointed by how the FBI treated Roger Stone, an arrest that he'll, quote, think about asking the FBI to review.
I'm joined by Jelani Cobb from The New Yorker. He writes about race, policing, and civil rights. Thank you for being here. What do you see in this new concern from these Trump people?
Well, it's the disparity. Like, when we talk about this disparity between how whites are treated and how blacks are treated, it is that encapsulation, it's that attitude. And so, you know, I mean, I've reported on this stuff, and I've been out and seen police jump out of cars and throw people in the middle of the night down, you know, face down, just on suspicion of marijuana possession. And suspicion based on geography. I think this person's in a neighborhood, and that's why you have jumped out in the middle of the night and thrown this person down on the ground. Yeah, you mentioned that for just some context, and we've covered those kind of stories a lot. Let's look at some of your reporting there in that frontline piece. Let's take a look.
Don't touch me, bro. Please don't touch me. Oh, yeah, hold on. Hold on. I'm not doing that. Come on, man. I swear to God, I did not.
All right, sir. Stop. Stop. I'm the other guy. I don't have to.
I didn't do nothing.
Stop. Just stop, sir. Just stop.
Sir, you're not under arrest. Okay. Just for your safety, I'll safety.
Yeah. That guy was walking home from a neighborhood bar.
And you were there?
Yeah. And just in his community. And so when we're talking about that, like that kind of inkling of suspicion warrants that level of force. But someone who may well have helped subvert American democracy, but who is certainly, at least in the eyes of the government and eyes of the indictment, someone who's believed to have lied to Congress, offenses that carry a great deal more weight in the implications of what their ultimate outcome could be. You have people knock on your door, and that's thought to be too harsh. No one laid a hand on him. He was not face down on the pavement anywhere. But this is how policing is done in black and brown communities. And so it goes back to, like, one of the things that we thought about with the Kavanaugh hearings was the real offense is not that someone is being held accountable. It's that this particular person is being held accountable. That these rules were supposed to be suspended for individuals of his race, of his socioeconomic class, of his political connections, and so on. And so that is, in some level, the kind of indignation and entitlement that we've seen throughout the entire Trump administration. You can kind of encapsulate it as a theme there. And so that's what this is.
Do you think people realize the double standard? There's all kinds of discrimination, and there's also habits of mind, and then there's all the, we've talked about this before, there's a lot of studies about unconscious bias.
Right.
It's a bad thing, but it's not always a conscious thing. Is it that people are suddenly discovering a critique or a concern about the very serious power of the criminal justice system because it's happening to people they identify with, or in Donald Trump's case, his buddies?
Sure. And so it's hard to get inside someone's head and say, is this unconscious bias, or is this a sense of personal entitlement? You know, with Donald Trump, you know, if you're trying to unravel his psychology, you need a very long rope, a flashlight, and, you know, good luck to you. You know, you will be traveling down a very deep, dark cave. But I think that in the bigger sense, it's like the orange is the new black dynamic. Like, the great thing about that show was that it took a waspy blonde white woman and said, this is what the war on drugs is.
Right.
And for people who would never, and then slyly subverted that and used it as a way to talk about the lives of black and brown women who had far fewer resources and far more bleak outcomes than she did.
And what would you say directly to Roger Stone, who is out on bail, unlike the 470,000 people I showed, many of whom are also presumed innocent but don't have the money to get out, and while out on bail, he is using that freedom to make these charges?
Well, what I would say is Roger Stone is my neighbor. He's a Harlem resident, not my direct neighbor, but we're in the same community. Talk to people in Harlem about policing, and talk to people who are in that community. Walk down the street and ask people about what their interactions with law enforcement has been. And then you get a true gauge of what happened to you and where it fits on the spectrum of excessive force.
I think that's fair advice. And for advice for all of us, for people, if, again, there are people who are critical of the Mueller probe. If it looks unfair that prosecutors have so much power, or you have this concern that people are being treated away before trial, let's figure it out. I mean, something else that I'd love to have you back to talk about is, you know, the second largest jail in America is Rikers. It's for people who've been accused of crimes, not convicted of crimes.
That's right.
That's the system we have. And so if this shines a light on it inadvertently through, as you say, what did you say, through the Trump psyche?
Right. It's spelunking. Right. You're going to be going down a deep cave.
Yeah. Jelani Cobb, a perfect voice for this, for her expert. Thank you for being here. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.